Shri Lama Shri So Om Namo Manju Shri Lama Shri Namo Lama Shri So
That's one more than that. Thank you. Please sit down.
No, I'm going to get a general view so you can see everyone. And we'll hook you up. Bill Kane is here too.
Really?
Yeah, alias George A. Lady Di is here.
My
All
goodness.
sorts of
You think
strange.
they'd have learned their lesson? by
You'd have
now?
thought so, yeah. Okay.
You got
So
one
while
more?
Venerable is getting hooked up, I just want to say a few words. So I didn't have much contact with Venerable, and just heard his name for many years, John Jackson, and he was director of Bhadrapani Institute in California. And I got to know him when he seemed to be in Lama Zopa Rinpoche's entourage at Root Institute 6 or 7 years ago, and somebody whispered in my ear that this guy does a lot of meditation on Lam Rem, stages of the path. So then I thought, well, that's good, and he's with Rinpoche, and then, you know, gradually I got to know more. And Venerable was at Root Institute recently, and so we struck up very, very minimalistic conversations now and again, but he said he'd like to come to Delhi. I said, great, come and stay with me. My house is being redecorated. I'd love you to come and stay. So Venerable is staying with me a couple of nights, and it's great because he knows so many old stories from the organization and from Lama Yeshe, our founder. Very inspiring story. But that's not the only inspiring thing. I'm not going to say everything because it's online, it's on the posting. But basically, Venerable has spent a lot of the last 20 years or more of his life doing 5 to 7 month retreats, 3-month retreats again and again, and actually getting into the practice, you know, of the path. He taught the Kapan course as well, 2007?
18.
Yeah, 2018.
Yeah.
A year before you took your Kapan course. So like that, so I thought it would be wonderful. I just had this realization in the toilet this morning at home where one gets a lot of good ideas, you know, because it's a kind of place for letting go of old stuff. And then you feel relieved, and then you can, you know, you get good ideas. So I said, I have this wonderful person staying with me, and today is Monday, and it's Tushita, and so why should I go blah blah when you could share so much stuff? And it's the Losa time when we are supposed to remember our lamas, our very kind gurus. So what better than to have Venerable Yarphel talking about his experiences with the lamas, with his own practice, and also to give us a chance to ask a few questions later. So thank you so much for agreeing at such short notice this morning. And I think you'll see how there's deep appreciation from the international and the Indian community to hear what you have to say. So on behalf of the director, Dr. Anuka Singh, who couldn't be here because she's otherwise engaged, we want to welcome you and request you to inspire our minds with your reminiscences and advice. Thank you.
I will try. So, good evening, everyone. It's been nice to be here. So I think initially just to try to secure in our minds a good motivation for being here, that the hopes that whatever we talk about and gets discussed has some benefit for us, that it somehow causes us to develop more love and compassion and patience. for others and ourselves, and that it prepares us where we can be much more beneficial to everyone we come in contact with. So with motivation like that, we can all begin talking. Can everyone, I guess, first question, can you hear me? Okay, okay. So I'll start with real short history. I met the Lamas in we met Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa in March of 1977. In fact, on the 3rd of March, here will be the 46th anniversary of that most wonderful occurrence. And from that, it was a month-long retreat at Yucca Valley in California, which is for our side of the world, whatever that is over there. Yucca Valley was like a very turning point for, especially for Dharma in the West, and especially in California. And it was from that some land was offered for Vajrapani, which became Vajrapani Institute. And 1 month after that, my family and I had some money that we gathered together from selling our house, and we moved to Vajrapani with the idea of spending 1 year there to help build. My ex-wife and dear friend Elaine is still there 46 years later. My daughter is the cook there, and periodically I go back there and check in. And in fact, I think 2 weekends from this, I'm going to give some talks there for the first time, which is quite interesting. Anyway, I was a carpenter by trade since I was 15 years old, and that's all I ever wanted to be was a carpenter. I enjoy very much. And because of that, I had building experience. When we started Vajrapani, I was able to play a role in the building of all that for over 20 years. And then towards the end of that, Lama Zopa Rinpoche asked me to establish this retreat center at the south end of the Big Sur Coast, which is called Land of Calm Abiding. And I established that and was the director there for 9 years. And then from there, Rinpoche, I was asked to come to Washington State, where Rinpoche had just gotten this new land for his retreat place. And I was asked to come up and talk about building the altars for the house, which I had done for his other residents. And after 6 weeks, Rinpoche and his entourage left, and I was left there. And June will be 20 years since I've been there. And I've done, like the first 5 years, I did some major additions and projects. And then in 2008, Rinpoche had me begin what's called, in very loose quotation marks, lifetime retreat. And there's been many interruptions. I think mostly due to Rinpoche, besides my procrastination, but because the Rinpoche is giving me different projects to do and things. So my retreat time has been broken up, but there's been over 15 years, I think maybe about 10 years total.
10 years total of what?
Huh?
10 years total of what?
Retreat, I'm sorry. And most of it, until most recently, has been Lam Rim.
Could you just explain to the beginners what is Lam Rim? There's some very beginner.
Oh, really? Oh, well, let me back up then. So Lam Rim is basically a term called stages of the path. It's like from where we are now as beginners to enlightenment, to becoming a Buddha ourselves, is the steps, and they're very organized. Step 1, step 2, step 3, like this going, and they should be studied and meditated in order. Because if you miss one, the next one doesn't have the potential to reveal itself to you what's available by the understanding of that. And so it's the first step basically is understanding how precious it is that we're a human being with human intelligence and the value it has to us, how rare it is and how difficult to find. And then we think about death and impermanence, to understand that this precious thing we have won't last forever and it could disappear at any time. And it's that what we come to understand with this precious human rebirth that will be the only thing that benefits us when we pass. You know, we can't take, there's nothing we can take with us. There's not a sesame seed of any physicality that goes with us. And the only thing that goes with us is a continuum. There's not something that goes from this life to the next life. There's not one concrete thing. It's a continuum that's constantly changing, just like whatever was going on this morning is gone, and now you're here this afternoon. This morning is gone. And then after death, we think about, well, what could possibly happen to me? Right? And there's two choices. We're either going to get a more fortunate rebirth, or we're going to get a more unfortunate. We need to understand the causes of both to make sure that we nurture and develop the causes for fortunate rebirths, and we understand the causes that create unfortunate rebirths, and we avoid those, and we can purify these things. And there's refuge, and turning to the teachings of the Buddha, to recognize that those teachings are what will give value to our understanding and guidance. And then we study karma, this cause and effect, like what brings positive, negative actions and results. And then we study about how to be free from samsara, which is this state of being confused about what reality is. It's a state of not having really a choice. You know, we have delusion and confusion, and this is what runs our life. And so I want to say a brief summary, but anyway, then we study what it is like to devote ourselves to other sentient beings, the true course of happiness, and the practices we need to do for that, and become free of samsara and eventually become enlightened as a Buddha. I hope that sort of thumbnail is good enough for the moment. We can go from there. So anyway, I've been doing this retreat aspect up including today. Wherever I travel, I sort of continue my training schedule. So maybe I'd like to talk a little bit about my experience with the Lama Yeshe, to give you some idea about what an incredibly rare, precious teacher he was. I don't know.
Yeah, we can.
You can't hear, come forward.
It's okay. It's okay.
I can hear it. Yeah. Okay. All come forward.
We're okay?
Yeah.
Because I can't hear either. So I've got a sound system in and I've got this other thing wired on top of it. So it's an interesting combination. So anyway, I met Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche in Yucca Valley. And it was a 1-month meditation course that Lama Zopa Rinpoche taught the first 2 weeks on Lam Rim, we just talked about in the sketch. And then Lama Yeshe gave us an initiation and commentary on the Kriya Tantra practice of Vajrapani, because we were called Vajrapani Institute. We were like in the FPMT, I think we were the 3rd or the 4th center. I think Australia was 1, Mahamudra Center was 2. And then I don't know if we were 3 or 4, but we were one of the original beginnings of FPMT.
Let me say what is Vajrapani, Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri, they won't know what. Just briefly, what is Vajrapani?
Vajrapani.
Who is Vajrapani?
Who is Vajrapani? There are 3 principal aspects of a Buddha that it can manifest. One is compassion, which is manifestation of Chenrezig, or Avalokiteshvara. The second is wisdom, which is manifested by Manjushri. And the third is like the power of the enlightened mind, and this is Vajrapani. Okay, and like the Chenrezig Institute in Australia was the first center. It's called Chenrezig for compassion. Then there was Manjushri Institute in England after the wisdom, and then the Americans got Vajrapani. And so it went from there. So this land was donated and we moved up there, and I didn't have a lot of personal contact with Lama Yeshe until about 1980, when we started just getting ready to start building the first buildings there. And at that time, I spent some time with Lama, and the one thing he stressed when we were designing and building this, he says, make sure that you have a 1,000-year plan. That whatever you do, you think that it's going to last at least 1,000 years. And so it's a very helpful approach to not think you're just thinking about the next few years just to get by. You know, we're trying to develop something that would continually grow and bring benefit, and certainly Vajrapani Institute is doing that to now. Lama would come and give teachings a few times, and I attended those, and different things. I felt close to him, but I didn't have a lot of personal interaction until 1983, which was the last year of Lama's life. At that time, I was the director of Vajrapani, and Lama was coming to spend 6 months with us, starting in the spring of 1983. And so I was in charge of, I had a large role on things, but in finding a residence for him. He wanted to stay in Santa Cruz, California, which is a beach community. He wanted to be, down in there, and I found a house up on a hill where the ocean was a bit of ways, but he could still see the ocean in the distance. And rented a car for him because he was keen on driving by that point in time. Like that. So I picked him up at the airport. We took him to his house, and the next morning, the first thing I heard from Sister Max was, you have to get here right now and change this bed. The house I rented was from the bass player from a group called Deep Purple.
Oh,
An old,
really?
heavy, back in the 60s, early 70s, major rock and roll, something or other. And then she said, the bed is just full of, what, and Rinpoche and Lama can't possibly sleep in this bed. It's just, we bought new linens, we thought we were cool, and we were not. And so that day we immediately, new bed coming in, and took care of that.
What was wrong with the bed?
They had a lot of shagging on it. Yeah, and that energy was there, and for Lama, who's very sensitive being, it was not suitable. And so that was my like that. So anyway, over that 6-month period, I had almost weekly, if not more often, visits with Lama, and different things would happen. He gave what's quite famous meditation course called on the 6 yogas of Naropa at Vajrapani. It was a 2.5-3 week course on a very, very highest, one of the very most profound and advanced teachings, of which normally there's all these prerequisites for, and Lama says, I don't care about prerequisites, whoever wants to come can come. And so we had like 160 people for 3 weeks in a Gompa with a whole 120 like this. And so they gave this most profound teaching. Okay, now let's start some of the experiences. It was during this teaching that one of the evening meditations, Lama was in the guest house, which is 200 meters away, where we had for our teachers to stay in the Gompa, and an American monk named Thubten Yeshe was leading the evening meditation, and it was on Tumo meditation, which is developing the psychic heat by getting your consciousness to enter the central channel. And so for those of you who are new, you'll just have to excuse me, because I'm not qualified to really talk about what it is, even if I understood it. But so anyway, during this evening meditation, suddenly I had this incredible heat in my abdomen, And I had basically had all the experiences that they attribute to this practice of the bliss, the heat rising and melting the drops in the crown, the coming down, and the bliss and the single pointed concentration. And it was most incredible experience. Like that, I mean, even now, there's no way I'm qualified for that experience, but it was like Lama blessing me. It was like he just came and just entered my heart and gave me this experience and said, here is an example of what's possible. You know, I haven't revisited it ever since then, but it's still with me, very strong in my mind. It's like just a taste of what's possible in these advanced practices if one develops and tries like that. And so this was the beginning of this. So after the course and over the next bit of time, things are, the chronological thing is not my mind exactly, but basically these things happen like this. One Lama wanted to buy a house in that area down close to the ocean, and he and Sister Max found a house and he bought it, and they asked me if I would please get it ready for him to move into when he came the next time. And from that, he made it. His conversation we had was about this idea of universal education, which is trying to find a way to express the Buddha Dharma to people who are not thinking to become Buddhists, to be spiritual, but so they could understand through some method to understand the nature of their mind so they can become happy and become free of suffering. And so we had all these conversations, I mean, many, telling me his ideas and asking me what I thought about it like this. And so one day I get a phone call from one of his other students, who was actually the manager of Kopan for many years, Karuna, saying, he said, Jackson, my old name, he said, Lama has given us 1 week to find a place for universal education. And it was like a loaded situation. And we called the realtor that he'd used for his house, and she found 3 properties. The first one we took Lama and Jackie, his secretary, and Peter Kedge, and myself, and Karuna, and it was anyway, it was 2 buildings, something, and Lama says, no dear, this is way too small. This is not what we're talking about. The second one was a hospital that had been vacated for the mentally ill, and it was like just a hospital wing with like 6 rooms on each side and a hallway like this wide, and then we didn't even take Lama to that one to realize that wasn't going to happen. And then we found a place called Greenwood Lodge, and we're driving up the road, and it's through the redwoods back up, and it was like we were being played with by Lama. I mean, he knew this place all the time. We got in there, and here's this little bit rundown place with a big kitchen, assembly room, dining hall, 2 wings of rooms with, you know, maybe 60 rooms, you know, and swimming pool, garden, 55 acres of land. And it was like, of course. And so we brought Lama there, and he looked and he said, you know, this is it. I want you to do this. And so we went to work. Anyway, Lama had decided that Karuna's parents, who lived in Los Angeles, were quite wealthy. He said it's their time to practice generosity. So he invited them up. And at this time, Karuna had already gone back to Kopan, I believe, and his sister was there. And he had us all come over. It was Lama and Jackie, his secretary, and Ola, the cook, and Karuna's parents, and Karuna's sister, and myself. And we're sitting there waiting for dinner, standing around, and Lama sort of starts pushing me towards the front door and pushes me out the front door and grabs me by the front of my shirt and pushes me against the wall. And he says, I don't care what you do, you make this happen. You know, I'm going, like, wow. Oh, it was very powerful. I mean, I didn't really have to do anything. I mean, the thing is Karuna's father and mother are very astute was, and they played this more for them. The deal was they would take, they worked it to get Karuna back to the States. He'd been living in Nepal for 10 or 12 years, and he had a wife, and they wanted them close. And so the actual details of it aren't important right now. We can talk later about it. But anyway, so that got Karuna back to the States. Where'd it go?
Maybe we could also tell us a little about university education, what you felt Lama was emphasizing at that point.
Well, the emphasis was to try to find a vocabulary and a method to introduce the idea of all the various this Lama path I talked about, to be able to introduce people to that without it sounding like a religious trip. This is like a secular way to explain how precious it is to be a human being and not waste your time on bells and whistles and whatever people spend their time with, and to recognize that the impermanence, and we have this opportunity to find some meaning in our life, and that meaning is to be happy. And what's the cause of happiness? The cause of happiness is cherishing others. You know, the cause of misery, because we focus so much on me, and we just say it's an endless pit that never gets satisfied. You know, we can't find enough to satisfy this idea of our own, what my needs are. I don't know if there's time to spend much time with that if we want to do these other things.
Maybe just focus also on your experiences and what you feel is important for young Indian people now. How is Lama relevant for us now?
Okay.
Because
Well,
you cared very much for the Indian Sangha.
well, I mean, the point is, you know, Buddha was an Indian. You know, Buddhism this is the home of Buddhism. And, you know, the point is India gave Tibet and the rest of the world Buddhism and Buddha. And like Lama said, now it's time for us to give Buddha back to the Indian people. You know, it's so valuable. You know, it's so helpful. You don't have to be a Buddhist, but the teachings of the Buddha are so relevant, no matter time, place, situation. You can never get enough of cherishing others. And we always have too much of thinking about me, you know, the cause of our problems. And so the Buddha taught many methods to accomplish the changing one for the other.
How and why has the Guru been so important for you? Because you very much emphasizing just being to visit one of the Gurus in South India and just come back from that, spend 46 hours on the train back from there, and still at the end of the
well,
what's all this with the what is the
well, there's several layers of gurus. The outside group, we're taking we try to get a kind of conceptual mind guru we have. And there's another guru that's the very subtle level of mind, which is really our true guru. We're our own, and the point is without this guru, there's no Buddha, there's no Dharma, his teaching. You know, without that connection, you can't get it from a book. You have to have this mission from teacher to disciple, that just comes down. When I was just with one of my most precious gurus, Shabdi Son Rinpoche, who I knew previous life from 1978 until he passed away in 84, and now his current incarnation is 37. And just now, I asked him for an oral I've asked him now too, but oral transmission of one of the Bodhisattva Shantideva's texts, and it's specifically the 8th chapter of the Bodhisattva Charivatara on meditation. And I just got that in. I've lost track of the days, but 3 or 4 days ago. And then the last time I saw him a couple of years ago, I got the transmission of chanting the names of Mandrushi Namasangiti. But anyway, the point is, it's a living tradition where there's not somebody, you have this Muslim guru that pops up and says, I have the truth. You know, this is what I saw someplace, and this is what I think. It has value in some places, but the Buddha Dharma is a living tradition that came from Shakyamuni Buddha, who in this life, in his manifestation 2,600 years ago, manifested this enlightenment and taught us the method about how he became that way. He didn't create anything. All he did is by practicing and meditating and studying and paying attention, he understood the nature of his mind, the cause of happiness, and the cause of misery. And so we all want to be happy. We all want to be free from problems. And so he agreed, after much pleading from Brahma and these others, to agree to teach. And this is what he taught. He taught the Four Noble Truths the first time at Sarnath. And this is going way different direction, but well, excuse me. He taught the truth of suffering, which means we have to understand what our situation is. We can't be fooled by this material world we live in and we depend on as being a cause of happiness. You know, it's actually a cause of suffering. To understand that this place and time we live in is not what it appears to be. And there's a cause, the second truth, well, there's a cause to that. And it comes from the ignorance of believing things exist as they appear to us. Believing that I'm here and you're there. I can, through my senses, I can hear the truth of my ears. I can see the truth of my eyes. I can taste the truth of my tongue. I can smell the truth of my nose. I can feel this, I can tell you. And the truth is, there's no truth that can come from the senses. It all comes from our consciousness. It's what our mind makes out of that. You know, it creates our own reality. And so the ignorance that believes that things exist as they appear to us is the root of our problem. You know, things don't exist that way. So then he said, it's possible to be completely free of this, to be unburdened by this samsaric world this world we live in, that where we are completely run around by karma and delusion, by the experiences we created to have in this life, in the sort of situation we find ourselves in, and the delusion of believing that these things exist as they appear. You know, it's like your fault that I'm angry. You know, it's your fault that I have desire. You know, it's your fault that it's always this victim. The reason I'm not happy, the reason I have problems, the reason I'm unsuccessful, the reason I'm depressed, it's your fault. You know, it has nothing to do with me. I'm a poor innocent babe in the woods. You know, I have a good heart, I'm kind and considerate, and you SOB, you're the one causing all my trouble. You know, and it's so anyway, we can, by understanding the truth, we can be free from that. And he didn't leave it with that. He gave us a method, which is the path, which is this Lam Rim, which summarizes the entire path the Buddha taught. And so we have a method to overcome all this. And so the Guru is essential. We can't rely upon our ego's view of the world around us and think we can do this ourselves, because all we do is, generally speaking, all we do is make our ego greater by thinking, well, I've read this and I understand it. and so look how cool I am. And the guru's job basically is to destroy our ego. I mean, that's the thing that's causing us all our problems, is the way we identify ourselves. And it's not that we don't exist, we do, but we don't exist the way that we appear to us. We think we're this concrete, sweet, loving person, and the world is just after us, and it's not true.
So Venerable, how did Lama break down your ego? What methods did he use to cut you down?
Lama,
For him?
he had a different way. I have to go into my Lama story now.
Right.
So one of these, we had a Vajrapani board meeting at this house that we'd rented for Lama. And at the end of the meeting, everybody's leaving, and Lama says, "Why don't you stay and have dinner with me tonight?" And so I was very happy to do that. And we sat and had dinner, and then he wanted to watch a video, and he pulled out the deer hunter,
Yeah,
Robert Nira. And I was so embarrassed.
that was on Vietnam.
Yeah, it was like very foul language. I mean, really, really rough language. And I was so embarrassed to be sitting here with Lama and this thing going on. And, fortunately, the phone rang. And there were these two people from Manjushri Institute,
Oh boy.
Chip Rodamore and the translator for the teacher there. And they'd come to Santa Cruz from England, and they wanted to see Lama that night. And I said, "Cool. Lama, I'm going to excuse myself." And then he said, "No, no, no, dear." He says, "You sit right here, and you're not going to believe what you hear." So these two guys came, and I'm sitting here, Lama's there, and these two guys are sitting here. And Jackie's in the doorway over here standing. And what they brought an ultimatum. I'm trying to think what the term is. It's not blackmail. It's anyway. They were saying if Lama didn't,
And they were students of Lama.
what
That they were students of Lama.
they were, they were scared. The translator was scared to death.
Yeah.
I mean, he was Tibetan, and he couldn't even talk.
Yeah, Tenzin Lama.
Yeah. And so the deal was that somehow and over they found this property, had done shenanigans to get money and to support this program. And somehow the Geshe there decided that this should place in Lama Yeshe's. They had evidence of this wrongdoing, that unless Lama resigned from the board of directors, got away from Manju, they were going to the legal and have Peter and Harvey and everybody else, Roy, prosecuted and also come and get. And what? It was beyond, really beyond. You can't hear this going on. And so, and the whole time is, "Thank you, dear. Thank you, dear." And my face is redder and redder at the table. But Lama's completely cool. And they leave. And I had to take them, and then my neighbor in the town 20 miles away was gone, and so these two stayed there. And then that night, Lama made a recording to send back to Manjushri with him. And basically he said, "I agree to your terms." He said, "But you understand, you're making a huge mistake in Guru devotion." I mean, the thing is, the Guru is the most powerful thing we have in our practice. It's the source of, basically it's the source of everything we come to understand. And our Guru, whoever it might be, is the representative or manifestation of all the Gurus, like that. And all the Gurus are manifested, it's like that. So when you abuse or disparage this Guru, it's just like you've done that to all the Buddhas. And it's Guru devotion is the most powerful object we have, thing we have. It can bring can bring enlightenment in a single lifetime, and it can bring unbelievable suffering realms for longer than one can imagine. You know? And so it's very powerful. And so to see the translator, he understood this and he realized that he just made a huge mistake. And the other guy, I don't know. So that happened. And then a couple of weeks later, Tushita Rinpoche, my Lama who I was just with in incarnation, his previous life, gave a 3-week teaching and initiation on a highest yoga tantra practice. And somewhere in the second week, I get a phone call at lunchtime, and it's from Lama Yeshe. And he says, you have to go tell Son Rinpoche what you heard. He said, I'm too embarrassed to tell my guru. So Son Rinpoche was Lama Yeshe's guru. He said, I'm too embarrassed to tell him myself, so you go tell him. And Kabir will tell you, Son Rinpoche had the demeanor and the appearance of being very stern. And so I grabbed my friend Chuck Thomas and I said, Chuck, you're coming with me. So we went over to the Geshe house and I told Son Rinpoche what I'd heard. And he said, you know, there's nothing I can do because Lama and the Geshe there were both my students. He said, this is not my business. There's nothing I can do. He said, but what you need to understand from this, how important it is as a Dharma center, how everything you do is legal. Legal, that you don't put yourselves or the center in any kind of jeopardy because of whatever you're doing. And, you know, this is the time, you know, I mean, most of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa's students in the early 70s and like that, we were all hippies.
Did you have long hair?
Oh, yeah.
How long?
Like my father said, I know Jesus was a carpenter, but you don't have to look like him. So anyway, and for the first, so like 1985, myself and many of my friends, we were still trying to figure out how we could smoke marijuana and learn and meditate. You know, it was only that when we realized that it was an impossible situation, so we quit smoking. But at that, in the late 70s, early 80s, you know, Vajrapani was in California mountains. We could grow pot. And so that's what we're doing. So when Son Rinpoche tells me this, I'm going, oh boy. So anyway, shortly thereafter that we ceased and, you know, we were done. We understood and we quit, generally speaking, at least right around Vajrapani. So anyway, from that came this visit with that. And at that time, Lama was very unhealthy. He'd had rheumatic fever as a child, and his heart was greatly enlarged. In fact, when the doctors would look at it, his heart would like fill his chest. There was not much room for his lungs. And he said over the years that, you know, he said many times, he said, I've died. My heart has stopped. It was only because of my abilities as a meditator and my psychic abilities that I've been able to keep things going.
And he was 48 or so at this time when you're talking.
And in 1983, he was 48. And so anyway, he was manifesting not being healthy a bit. And when he left,
Then he came to come on to teach, is it?
what?
After
Yeah,
that,
he did. He actually went through Sweden and a couple stops in Europe and then back to Kopan. But before he left, I pleaded with him that if his health returned worse, he would please come back to America, you know. And he said, "We'll do, dear. We'll do, dear." And so he got back to Kopan and got very sick. Came to Delhi, was in the hospital, and then they got him a farmhouse someplace outside of Delhi, where his health didn't improve. And so they decided to bring him, he would come to America. And so I got a phone call saying to meet them at the airport in San Francisco, and it was Lama Rinpoche, Sister Max, and the Lama's doctor from India, who accompanied him on the flight. And they come off the plane and into there, and Lama's in a wheelchair, and I can't hide my feelings. They come out. And I saw Lama, and I just couldn't hardly believe how poor he looked. And all he could say is, "I'm fine, dear. I'm fine, dear," like this. So we go to Stanford University Hospital, where he's going to have this heart investigated for heart surgery. And we're there, and Sister Max and the doctor go to the counter to get.
Could I just mention, Sister Max started the Vipassana meditation in Tihar jail. She was a black woman who was Lama's student for many years.
She was the sole source of Kapan for the first 15 years. Basically, she's an incredibly generous woman. Wonderful. Oh, I love her. I'm sorry. So yeah, while they're checking in, Rinpoche and Lama Zopa Rinpoche are sitting over the side in this little lobby, and I said, "Rinpoche, can I please ask you about these dreams I've had?" And he says, "Please, please." And so I said, "Well, just 3 or 4 days before they arrived, I have this dream of Lama." And he looks at me really sternly and he says, "You don't know who I am. You don't know who I am. I am Lama Haruka. I am Lama Haruka," which is this manifestation of enlightened being. You know, is there? I don't know. Anyway, and then the next night or two, I had another dream, and Lama's looking at me really fiercely, and he sticks his hand in this fire and grabs a bunch of hot coals and puts in my face and squeezes them, and the sparks are flying. You know, and wow. So I said, "Rinpoche, what's happening? What is this?" And he said, "First place, you have to understand, in this point in time, we were also naive back in those early years. I had no idea about any of these things." And Rinpoche said, "This is who Lama is. He's Lama Haruka. This is his actual manifestation. He's actually Haruka in human form. And what he's showing you with this, when he's squeezing the thing, he has complete control of the elements. You know, he's a Buddha. You know, he has complete control. And this actually was a terrible disaster for me to hear this, because from there they couldn't. They sent Lama home from the hospital after a couple, 3 days back to the new house we had in Aptos, or Rio del Mar by Santa Cruz. We fixed up, and so Lama went there and was doing quite well. And then after about 2 weeks, he had a stroke. And I'm 15, 20 miles away. And I get a call from one of them. And at this time, I'm like managing the household there for them. And during the day and at night, I'd go home and sleep and come back, and arranging the students who would come, and Tom Waitner's coming to massage, and the different people helping the household, cooking and cleaning and making sure everything was right. And so we had 2 nurses, and I get a phone call like at midnight, 1 in the morning, saying Lama just had a stroke. And so I said, "Where?" And she said, "They're going to take him to Santa Cruz General Hospital." I jumped in the car and I set a land speed record from my house to Santa Cruz. I beat the ambulance, which was much, much closer. And I got there, here again, my poker face was just like as they pull Lama out of the ambulance and the gurney. And he looks at me, he says, "I'm fine, dear. I'm fine, dear." And I'm just, and then they discovered they took him to the wrong hospital. And so they had to take him to the Dominican, which is quite close, but it was like that. And so he was there, and the second day he was in the hospital, the Rinpoche said, "We had this meeting," and Rinpoche told the doctors, "You've got to get him in a private room." He was in a room like with 8 beds. And he says it's Lama can't survive there because these other people are sick and suffering, and he's taking it all on. You got to get him out of this room. And so they agreed to do that. And then I find myself taking part in this meeting of the 2 nurses and a couple other people, and Rinpoche and the doctors, and trying to discuss what should be done if Lama goes into cardiac arrest or something. And all I can say is, I'm not taking part in this meeting. I'm not qualified to. This is not my business. You can whatever. So I just sort of pulled back and just listened. But so anyway, they sent Lama home. And then from then, it was a gradual, slowly downhill. He went from there, we took him to Presbyterian Hospital in San Francisco. And he was there for 2 or 3 days. And then they took him by air ambulance from San Francisco to Los Angeles to Cedars Sinai. And at that point, I'd been like 4 weeks without any time off. And so when they flew to LA, I said, I'm going to take a couple of days and just catch my breath, and then I'll come join you.
How old were your children then?
This is I got to stop. This is 1983. My daughter was 11. My son was, I'm losing track, 8, and my other son was 5. And so they got to Cedar Sinai and Lama passed there. And then we were doing, it was on Losar, which is that year was March 3rd, which is, so our resident Geshe said we were doing the Lama Chopa Soap Puja at Lama's house there, and I got the phone call that Lama had just passed, and I couldn't even get it out of my mouth, tell people what I'd heard. And the Geshe said, you have to go right now. So this is the day you go get cash on the counter and get them and go with a, So I flew down there and I got to the hospital. His holy body was still in the, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, my root guru, Geshe Gelson, there with him. They were doing medicine Buddha, and a couple of other students were there who had gone down with him. And then there we took arranged to take his body back to Pani, where we cremated his holy body.
So you moved the body quite something fast.
They used to keep him not in that room, but for a few hours. But then in Berg, they're allowed to stay there, and some people stayed at home. And then in a cardboard in the back of Tom Wagner's Toyota, sticking up into the beds to off, we go 400 miles of Vajrapani. And it's just amazing. So we got back in. The legal authorities didn't quite understand what we were asking for, but they gave us a burning permit, like we were going to burn brush. So we got a legal permission to do this, and so within a couple of days, 170 some odd people from all around the world showed up, students, and this is all hosted by Sister Max.
Wow.
She paid for everything, all the food, we rented cars to transport people from the airport. Everything. We were making $4,000 a day donations to all the lamas who came.
Is this from her fashion business? What did she do?
She had a fashion business where she started by buying old saris and remaking them. And she actually, that year, she was on the cover of Saks Fifth Avenue on their Christmas edition. And she was very famous at that point in time. She was on talk shows and like that, and she was doing very well, but she spent all of her money on Lama. And
Can you also share the kind of things Lama said the last few days of his life? What did he say to students?
well, he didn't say much. I mean, there were some times where, you pray to be close to your guru. And the next thing the nurse is asking you, please come wash Lama's private parts. Please take him to the toilet. It's just very, you can't imagine ever thinking you'd be in a position like this with your guru, and then suddenly you're there. So, for me, Lama has always been the inspiration. I mean, he was like the source of the fire, the inspiration. My other gurus, certainly, they're all exactly the same to me, but Lama Head was very special this way. I don't, anyway, that's I made a couple. Oh, there's one note. There's the last teaching that Lama gave at Vajrapani. He was requested to give a commentary on a practice called Vajrasattva Soap. And there's actually a DVD of that that's available from Wisdom. And in the first, there's 3 Sundays he gave his teaching, like that. And the first one, you'll see whenever Lama mentions San Francisco, he starts giggling. He can't stop himself. And the reason is the Lama's sort of attendant and cook during that time was Oa Del Banco. And Oa was gay, openly gay. And we all, there's no. And so he took Lama to San Francisco to the Gay Freedom Day parade the day before. And, there was, and it's a very, very outrageous event to show up to. And so Lama was there for that. And so whenever he mentioned San Francisco, he'd look at Oa and he just couldn't contain himself about, he had a really good time there. I can promise you this. So anyway, and
That was the text he wrote, I think he wrote that, right?
yeah, the first Dharma he wrote a short text on that, and then he, at John McKay's request, he made a commentary at Vajrapani.
People still practice it.
Yes, yeah. I don't know anybody who does it on a regular basis, but quite often, when we do soak, we'll do that because it's like a review of the Lam Rim. We talked about. So maybe that's that part. What time is it? 7:30.
Any humorous incidents?
Well, just me. I mean, what Lama did to me, he would put me in uncomfortable situations. He had 2 interesting outfits. One, I don't know what, there's a name for a woman's dress. It's like, it's long and it's just like a one-piece thing that's sort of straight. He wears a belt. Had buttons all the way down the front. So he would wear that out and about. And we would go places and someone would ask me, who's this? And he's he's wearing these outrageous sunglasses, and he's got quite often what have this is before Rainbow Pride. So, but he was way ahead of his time with this. It was like a white cap with a small brim, but the front of the brim had rainbow plastic in it. And it's just outrageous. I remember we went to the bank for him to open a bank account. And we're doing this, and then the woman's doing this, and she's looking, she says, who is that? And here again, I didn't have the courage to say, well, this is a great holy master. I mean, all I could say was that this is my teacher. He's a Buddhist monk, and we're doing this. But it was almost like, what are one of the disciples denying Christ? I'm just not. I just couldn't. It was a great source of shame for me, embarrassment over the years. So, okay, but I alluded to one about how it was a great problem for me after these 2 dreams, because the reason it was stated for Lama's passing was there was a disharmony in what now is FPMT, and then it was CPMT, this organization, and not nearly as many centers, maybe 30 at that time. There was this Manjushri situation. There was like almost in Providence Institute. There was feuding. There's just people just be like this. Nothing really. Some of it more difficult, but just like picking, And it was given as the reason. So because Lama, this is Lama Ruka, and he has control of the elements. He can control whether he's going to live or die. He's a Buddha. And so I thought, well, okay, what's going to happen here? He's doing this to bring us all together. This healthy situation, and he's going to, everything's going to be cool. And then, so when I got this phone call, he died. I couldn't believe it, because I had my mind that he was going to just, okay, fooled you guys, now you need to be harmonious. But that's not what happened. So I was actually angry, and it took me almost 10 years to get over it. I was so upset with Lama. I couldn't, knowing that he could change. I mean, since then I've learned a great deal, and knowing that we created the situation ourselves that had nothing to do with, it had something to do with Lama, but we created the karma, or the to have this result. We didn't have enough merit for Lama to stay with us at that point in time, and so I just like that, and so that was the thing. And then during Chapter Son Rinpoche came for the cremation ceremony of Lama, and during that, we built, Andy Weber and I were the main factors in building the cremation stupa, and when we put Lama's holy body in it, I was actually the last person to have a hand on it before we went, because I was closing it up. And then when the stupa started, like, the cremation stupa is over here, and Son Rinpoche's throne is right here, and the steps are going down, and I got a seat back. I took back here just to be handy if I was needed, but I really wanted nothing to do with it. It was like the saddest day of my life. And so I'm down there, and this is my same Son Rinpoche I've been talking about. I was just with this reincarnation, and the puja's going on, the fire's going on, and the smoke's billowing, and Lama's body's getting burned up inside there. And we have all these Lamas there, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and doing puja, and Son Rinpoche on the throne. And he's manifested as like Yamantaka, but he can't talk. He's got to stay as Yamantaka, he can't speak. And he looks back at me in the middle of puja, he stops. And he mentions for Tenzin Wanchuk, his attendant, finally to understand he wanted his briefcase. So he gets his briefcase in his lap, Georgie and bell in hand, gets a piece of chocolate and hands it to me. Just to try to somehow rescue them, But anyway, it was these are the events there, and Lama's kindness can never be repaid. Never, ever. And so, okay.
Maybe questions? If you like some questions.
Maybe, I can stay, I had my espresso earlier, and I can talk for a long time.
About Lama, about practice, about whether you were lonely in retreat.
Yeah, I would much rather.
You told me something really good about retreat and objects from outside and being complete within oneself.
Oh, well, I'd much rather talk about this than myself. I enjoy it. What Kabir and I were talking about was the guy's name wrote the book Wait or something? The book that I found, what the guy's name wrote that book, those little sayings, Wait or
The Sambha Rinpoche book or the Guru book?
no, the book on
Excuse me at the back, could you be quiet?
the book I pulled off your shelf last night and had all those short chapters on different topics. The poet and whatever his name was. Anyway, the first one was on being alone or something.
Oh.
And that's
David White.
David White.
Constellations, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the thing that happens when you spend, for almost 20 years, but certainly the last 15 years, I've lived by myself, not with, and seeing people not often, certainly once or twice a year, generally once a year, I would see my family. I'd go to California and see my family like this. And I would see there's a couple of monks who take care of Rinpoche's house there on the property. I have a cabin up on top. It's
Which
small,
burned down one time,
Yeah.
right? It burned down completely.
yeah, that's not
That's
important.
something else.
Anyway, but anyway, and there, I can't see their Lama's house, Rinpoche's house down below where they take care, but I have internet, so I can send them a shopping list on Monday night. Tuesday, they go to town and shop for me and drop it off. And I don't have to see anybody. I can't, there's no neighbors. I don't hear very well anyway. And so I can have complete solitude as much as I want. And it's hard to describe the process, but what happens over time is you get really comfortable being alone. And it's not being lonely. It's being alone to really, all of the longer I can have a session, the 3 months is okay, but 3 months is about where things really begin getting interesting. It's like when you get to 7 or 8 or 9 months, but all this stuff comes up, like just like a freight train that you didn't know was there, you completely forgotten about and hadn't thought about for 30 years, and suddenly you have this reality. But what happens is because of doing all this meditation on Lama Rinpoche, there's you have a complete toolbox to deal with whatever comes up. You know, I whatever comes up, I've got the method to fix it, and I've been meditating on it, so it's easy to fix. And not to say I don't get angry, but I hardly ever get angry. You know, I all these things that used to destroy my happiness, I found a tool, you know, a method to change. And so because of that, it become, I don't have like some realization, I just have some experience. It's you get to where you realize that this all your happiness and your well-being is dependent on me. It's not dependent on you or you or you or you. I don't, how you treat me doesn't make any difference. You know, I don't need you, I don't need your approval. I don't need you to, you know, it's not that I don't love you and care for you, but I don't need something from you. I've got something to give you. You know, I'm more, you know, I don't need to take, I don't have to have some conditional thing. I'm treating you really nicely, so I expect you to like me. You know, it doesn't make any difference. You know, my purpose is for you to be happy. And what I can do in my limited way to help, that's, you know, and I'm limited, and I'm trying to be less limited, but it's that attitude of discovering that I can be like this, I can be of service without having to take something. There's something that way in my mind.
Suddenly manifesting.
But anyway, it's not to say I don't have.
We don't need it. If people can hear anyway, it's okay. And there's more people online and they can hear well. Doesn't matter.
Okay. Okay. And it's not to say I don't have things that come up and have to deal with stuff, but I'm much more prepared about it, and I require less from the people I'm with. You know, I don't have to be what to say. I mean, I really enjoy being with people. It's not, and I enjoy company, I enjoy conversation, but I don't have to enter into this needing to grasp something to reinforce my ego or something.
But you need the guru still.
Oh, absolutely. I can't. I mean, Lama Zopa Rinpoche says you should, you know, how many gurus you've got, and you know, one of our old, our teacher's teacher was Pamonka Rinpoche, and he said, most Tibetans said they can tell you exactly how much change they have in their pocket, but they can't tell you how many gurus they have. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, if when you're thinking about your gurus, when you're visualizing, he said, if you leave one out, you can make a huge obstacle. So anyway, one over the years, when I read that book, The Light Heart of the Path, when I learned this, and I went back to figuring this out. Anyway, it came a really incredible number of gurus I've had. But the thing is to not see them as different. I've had like 7 or 8 or 9 gurus who are very close to, and I've never, ever had any contradiction. That this one says this left and this one says right. I've never, ever had the slightest thought about trying to figure something like that out.
So they might be saying contradictory things, but you don't see it as contradictory. You just see it as
I don't even know if I've heard it as contradictory. The thing is that we get from the guru how we see it. If we see our guru as somebody who's limited, then what we get from them is limited. We say he's right, except maybe like this. But if we see our guru as a Buddha, what we get is the Buddha. We don't get something less than a Buddha. It's not our teacher's responsibility to be the Buddha. It's our responsibility to see our teacher as a Buddha. There's no, from the teacher side, he could be whatever, but if we want to get that result, we have to see them as a Buddha. The different levels of practice or different schools of Buddhism, to see the teacher as if he was a Buddha, to see the teacher what they all are. But anyway, from the teachings that I've had from my teachers, is the teacher is the Buddha. And so when you have these different teachers, that there's no contradiction.
Have you had teachers from other lineages?
Yes, I've had from all lineages. I mean, the total of teachers I've had is 52.
It's like some couples.
And the thing is, the early years, we'd have teachers come through like Santa Cruz or something, or the Bay Area, and they'd come and give a talk. Maybe only one talk. I might just sit down and have coffee with them. But if you meet one of these beings and you feel like they've improved, you've gotten something from them, suddenly they're your teacher. That's your choice to relate that way. That is my choice to relate to them that way, because then I get the reward. I get the reward by seeing them that way. I get the benefit of I just had a cup of tea with Buddha, and it's been very helpful. And so like that. So anyway, there's from all the lineages I've had teachers, and some of them I hold very close, and some of them I haven't seen for 40 years. Like that. But this is truly, very, very fortunate to be like that.
Questions from here, and then maybe some online.
Thank you. You mentioned one incident where Lama dressed, the way he did, went to the bank. Was it that he was trying to teach you something, because you said that you were embarrassed, or you were ashamed? So was he trying to sort of pinpoint that you have to address the embarrassment or shame inside of you, and also that's but how do you sort of work through that from having feelings of shame and embarrassment to complete guru devotion?
Well, looking with hindsight or perspective that I have now, what Lama was doing was what he was doing. Whatever his reason could or could have had nothing to do with me, but what I got was how I looked at that situation. He said, believing that this is what I'm seeing, that Lama is like this, and believing it's coming from Lama's side, when actually it's in my own fantasy that I'm believing is real and reacting to it. It has Lama is just doing what he's doing. And it was just how I chose to interpret that. And not only the interpretation, but believing that that's the reality. That my projection is what's real rather than nothing to do with it, really. It was just me. And that I got that from it at that point. But the point is, over time, I really got a lot of it to see how, by projecting on that and getting that experience, how bogus it is. It's completely, it's my fantasy, and I believe my fantasy was true at that point in time. And it was very short. It wasn't like it lingered and like that, but it was like just going, boy, I didn't do very well with that. Like that. Mhm. Mhm.
Sometimes you connect with the teacher who may not be alive, who may not be there at that time that you were. So if you look at Lama Yeshe, we never saw him as he was. Or if I read Liberation of Palm in hand and connect with Lama Thubten. So how does that play out? Does the teacher have to do what the guru has to exist at the same time?
Well, we have lineage. So from Pabonka Rinpoche, who passed away in 1941, I think. I have like maybe 4 teachers who were direct students of his. And so I'm like Pabonka Rinpoche's grandson. There's a lineage from him, his mouth to their ear, from their mouth to my ear. And so there's a connection, and it's the lineage. I mean, when we quite often when we do like Lama Chopa Giorgio, we'll have this entire lineage. We'll go back and from the lineage of this teaching, mention all the gurus in that lineage could be like 40 or more. And it's this appreciation for the connection we have that goes back to Shakyamuni Buddha. I mean, that's what's so wonderful about this, is that it's not somebody just didn't make it up with some mushroom guru popping up. We've got this incredible lineage that comes from these teaching, and that if the lineage gets broken, the teaching almost if it's a particular like empowerment or something like that, it's no longer valid. It's not something. It's been broken, and that's why it's so important. I mean, Lama Zopa Rinpoche is, what shall I talk? He's very intent on getting all of these transmissions from different lineages, from different teachers, from Sakya, Nyingma, especially. He gets all of these lineages continuously, and it's like somewhere in the last few years, I finally realized what that is about. And it's not, for me, it's not, I mean, we're quite old, so I'm not thinking, but to take that lineage, to create a cause to get it again, that's why with, Lama Zopa Rinpoche has given several like that, and Sukhan Simchap Rinpoche has given some, and like I said, with Chabdi Son Rinpoche, a couple of years ago, I got this Manjushri, and then just 3 or 4 days ago, I got from Shanti Deva that I've been trying to get. So to get this lineage from Shanti Deva comes from the 7th century, from Nalanda. And so it's been passed down, guru to disciple. And so now, at least that 8th chapter has come in here, and the promise, the rest to come next August. And so it's really, it keeps these things alive, so we're connected. Like, even though we didn't meet Pabonka Rinpoche, even though you haven't met Lama Yeshe, you've got a connection. You've got a connection with Kabir, myself, and Luca, and there's that connection that's there. And so, I'm trying to think if it was, I think Pabonka Rinpoche, when he was passing away, they were asking him who should return to, and he pointed to Trichon Dorjichon, Trichon Rinpoche, and he said, when you get teaching from him, is it just as exactly as if you're getting teachings from me. You know, and so this is this lineage, and it's so important.
And he was the junior tutor of the Southern.
He was the junior teacher of His Holiness. So. Yes.
When you mentioned the 10 years it took for you to get over the anger, you mentioned that it took you 10 years after Lama Yeshe passed away.
Oh.
You know, so what was the turning point?
Oh.
And also, how was it meeting with his incarnation Lama himself?
Yeah.
You could maybe just share.
What's his name? It's just that I became the, I mean, sort of from the time it happened, I realized that there was some attitude or feeling that I needed to figure out and overcome, because I knew it wasn't valid. You know, there's like an emotion, but it was like, no, this is not, this, you know, this isn't like that. And so it just took time to think about it, and to meditate, and to think about it, and meditate, and think about it, and meditate. And finally just, oh God, I'm so full of it. You know, to see that here again, it's my ignorance projecting on something and thinking, it's not realizing it's coming from here, but thinking it's coming from there, and blaming it on there, rather than realizing that really it's my misunderstanding about how things appear to me, and thinking that's true, and it's not. You know, and it's like maturing as a practitioner. It wasn't like some, you know, some slap in the face or something that said, wake up. You know, I was waking up from the time I had that feeling, and it just took a while to get all the stuff out of my eyes so I could understand.
Lama, so you have a connection with the reincarnation?
I did. When he first was announced as the reincarnation, was like a year and a half old. And they came to Vajrapani when he was 2, I think. And at that time, we built a stupa with some of the relics from Lama's holy body who were in that stupa. And also was there for the consecration of the stupa. And I got to meet him at that time, and then had a little bit of interchange, but not too much. And here again, one of these contradictions that comes up quite often, but has happened more than once in my life, where Lama Zopa's up in the Gompa at Vajrapani teaching. I had to pee, so I had to run out of the Gompa and the outhouse down we had for the course. And then Lama Oso's in the sandbox, and I have to go by him, and he makes me stop, and he wants to play in the sand with the toys. And Lama Zopa's up there teaching. And so I'm like, you know, and I decided I should go to the Gompa, you know, and here again, I don't know if there's a right or wrong, but that's what I did. And then that was 86. And then in 1989, when His Holiness gave the college opera in Santa Monica, California, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche and also, and a whole crew came, and we all ended up staying at this small little hotel that had maybe 20 rooms with a courtyard and a swimming pool. And so we spent a lot of time playing in the pool and fooling around. And one time I've got, Lama was still trying to learn to swim, so I was holding him like this, and he's holding on to me, and we would say Lama, you know, that's how we were calling him. And finally, somebody at the side of the pool said, "Is that Lama Yeshe?" And then this voice of this little boy said, "No." And so I said, "No," but with a wink. Sort of thing. But and then I didn't see probably in 2012 in Bulgaria also was there. I didn't have much connection then, and then I was telling Kabir today in 2016 I found myself in Kuala Lumpur attending some, chasing Lama Zopa around because I hadn't had teachings from him for 7 or 8 years, like any more than a couple of talks. And also, Gomal Tuku came to the center in Kuala Lumpur to talk and answer questions. And at the end of that talk and all the different students going through one at a time, asking questions, and a really long period of time, finally I was the last one to offer also the kata, and he said, "Tell me your Lama Yeshe stories." And I said, "There's no time." And he said, "Well, tomorrow we'll make arrangements, you come have lunch with me." And so I ended up going to the house where he was staying and having lunch, and they had a video camera set up, and we talked for 2 or 3 hours. I don't know what all, but a much more elaborate version of what we talked about tonight. And it was during that time I really got this incredible hit that this is Lama. There's no question in my mind, that this was just the way he was interacting and asking questions. And Lama had a way when he was talking, no matter what's going on, it was single pointed focus right here. You could be setting bombs off, but he's talking to you. There wasn't, he got your undivided attention when you talk to him. And so anyway, it was like that. And I left that quite certain of that. And at lunch, we were talking, or anyway, also in this life is a lot of people have no idea what's going on with it. And not that I do either. But the idea of this universal education about trying to find a way to communicate the Dharma in a secular way. And so also comes back, and when it's, especially His Holiness the Lama Zopa Rinpoche, they talk when these holy beings come back, they come back with ordinary appearance. They're not here as a ball of light glowing in the sky. They're coming back looking exactly like you and me, with all the warts, all the bad habits, all the tattoos, liking rock and roll music, liking smoke, they're just like us. We can't look at it and say, "Oh, he's special," They're trying to find a way to be just like us so they can communicate with us. If we keep them up on a pedestal when they're so young, it's really difficult for them. So anyway, to me, this is what Oso's been up to, is trying to find some vehicle. This is just my opinion. This is nobody else's. So you can, whatever. But to me, he's trying to find a vehicle and a method that he can make this communication. He's tried some video, he's tried some music, he's tried this and trying that. And now he's got this Global Tree Initiative. And I just saw something where he's doing some teaching thing on, I can't remember, but it has to do with mental attitude and mental health or something that he's starting in quite soon in Mexico for some students. And so I think he's still he's narrowing it down to what that might be. And I have no idea, but to me, I'm just watching. I like I say, no question, this is Lama's reincarnation, it's a continuation of his holy mind. And it's just watching him trying to figure out what's going to work for us. And it's not so much for Kabir or not. It's not, his old students are taken care of. We already got, we got the hook well centered in our mouth or on our hearts and like that. It's for all the people who don't have a Dharma connection, who haven't made a connection, that need to make this connection with him or holy beings like him. And this is, to me, is what he's up to. And whether or not that's true, I don't know, but that's from when I watched, this is what I think, like that. I don't.
I remember something.
Yes.
You said how you are regarded by some as more classical because you don't give a watered down version of Buddhism when you teach. So apparently you have mentioned hell realms a lot in your teachings. Could you give that in some context? Why do you talk so much about hell? What is hell? Is it a realm apart from the human realm?
Yes,
it
is.
And how do we get there? What is it? Sorry about it.
we all should go get a cup of coffee and something.
Yeah.
You're gonna get me started now.
You don't have to answer.
Hmm?
People upset people.
Oh, well, one of my great teachers was Reba Rinpoche, and we did Reba Rinpoche, and he gave us 9-day teaching on death and impermanence at Vajrapani in October of 2001. And he started, and we're going, and he said, some teachers don't talk about this because the students don't want to hear that. And he says, I'm not like that, and I sort of have, I believe that's true. I don't, we have to know the truth. The Buddha taught about the hell realms. He taught about the unfortunate realms, the hell realms, the realm of hungry ghosts, and the animal realm, and then taught humans and demigods and the god realms. And the Buddha taught this. And Lama Zopa talked about the hell realms, the lower realms. Tushita taught about them. Milarepa, Gampopa, Rachungpa. All of these lamas over the last 2,600 years have all taught about this. And not one of them said, we're fooling you. Over 2,600 years, if it wasn't true, somebody would have let the cat out of the bag, if there was a cat in the bag, but they haven't. But what has happened in the last 40 years, because Westerners don't want to hear it, what they'll hear is, in reality, there's not a hell realm. In reality, there's not a place waiting for you like that. But what they say in reality, what they're saying is an ultimate reality. There is not a hell realm. So when you say ultimate reality, that means inherently existent. That means existing separate from causes and conditions. And so when you say in ultimate reality, there's no hell realm, in ultimate reality, there's no New Delhi. New Delhi came to be because of causes and conditions, and it will be here as long as people have the karma to live here. The hell realms are exactly the same. They exist because of the causes and conditions of sentient beings who harm others with anger. And as long as sentient beings continue doing that, they will create a cause to have residence in such a place. The Buddha said, when asked to give some idea about the relative number of hell beings, or beings in actually the different realms. And he said, if you took, and the hell realm beings could be represented by how much dust it would take to cover the entire earth. All those grains of sand or dust to cover the entire earth. And the hungry ghost could be represented by the number of grains of sand in the Ganges River. Still a large number. The number of animals, we're talking about krill, we're talking about insects, could fill, I don't know liters and things, but it equivalents to like a 150-gallon barrel. I mean, how many liters is that? 500-liter barrel. So it's all of these animals and insects compared to the hungry ghosts and hell realms. And he said the number of human beings would, if you stuck your finger in the dust, how much would get caught underneath the fingernail and on top of it? It's an incredibly minute number, even though there's 7 billion of us, compared to the animals. It's still minute. I mean, if we traded sizes, like all the animals were this size and we were the size of animals, they'd never find us. There'd be so many huge beings, and there would, we're a very small number, really. And so, one of the things in retreat, you make up these visualizations or things. And so I thought, well, if you took all these hell beings and they were represented by black sand, And all the hungry ghosts were represented by dark blue sand, and the animals by dark green sand. And the human beings like bright pink fluorescent sand, and you mixed them all together, and you went looking for one of those pink grains of sand. Would you ever find one? You know, maybe not. You know, it's very rare. So, but these hell realms exist in like 99.9999% of sentient beings. It's very hard to say, but are have a lower rebirth, have an unfortunate rebirth in one of these lower realms. And so when we meditate on compassion, we meditate on loving kindness, to just think about human beings. So it's good, but we're leaving out 99.9999% of sentient beings. You know, to realize the incredible suffering and difficulties that sentient beings have, and to find, and we have, and they're not strangers to us. They're not strangers. We've had an intimate relationship with each and every one of them. All of our happiness is due to them, the kindness that they've done to us over countless lifetimes. And that we don't contemplate those realms because it's not pleasant to do. People like to meditate on Mahamudra. They like to meditate on loving kindness and bodhicitta. They like to meditate on examining my body for the feelings and all these things. And they're all good, but they're empty of meaning when we don't think about all the sentient beings who are depending upon us to find a way to help them. You know, we haven't got it. When we have to, like a Buddha depends upon being a bodhisattva, which depends upon developing bodhicitta, which depends on developing great compassion, which is like the determination to help. It depends on compassion, which depends upon understanding the suffering that sentient beings have, which depends upon us recognizing our own suffering. Because if we don't recognize our own situation, if we're not honest about the sufferings of suffering, I mean, I just can go on. Suffering of change, or just the all-pervasive suffering we have just by having bodies and an existence that's brought about by karma and delusion. And we have to examine all the sufferings of sentient beings. There's 3, there's 6, there's 8, to recognize what our reality is. I mean, if we don't recognize what our reality is, we'll never make an effort to get out of it. You know, these Mahamudra teachings and things that we have, where we spend 30 minutes a day meditating on Mahamudra, nature of mind, it's all wonderful, but until we recognize this incredible, difficult situation we're in, we'll never put the energy into that practice to bring the fruit that it will offer. You know, that there's not, as long as it becomes a part-time thing, we will never, ever get the fruit. I mean, the Mahamudra teachings bring enlightenment. We become Buddhists from meditating on Mahamudra, but it doesn't do it by being a part-time meditator. It takes a total devotion, and the total devotion doesn't come until we have a reason. And the reason has to come from understanding this. I have to watch my language. Okay, the shit sandwich we're in. At Kopan, I brought this up. It was a great thing. We have a shit sandwich. Okay, and we can put mayonnaise and mustard on it, and we can put tomato and lettuce. No matter what we do with it, it's still a shit sandwich. It doesn't change. I mean, we can, no matter what walk in life we are. We were talking a little bit coming back, whether we're very wealthy and well off, or whether we're a low people by the train station, that's all I'm saying. We're all eating a shit sandwich. Some of us like it because the fries come with it for free. We just, but we don't recognize it. We think we can fix it by adding all these things to it. And like we said, samsara cannot be fixed. No matter what position you are in life, old age, sickness, and death cannot be escaped. You can't escape running into situations you don't want to be in. You can't escape from being separated from the things that you love and want to be. You can't escape from striving hard for things and failing to get them. These are some of the sufferings as a human being in samsara. And so you can't, the suffering of never being satisfied. As soon as we buy into, if I have money, I'll be happy. Well, the first time I'm unhappy, I just need more money, then I'll be happier. It's a never ending, the sign I saw on the train coming in last night on the department store, greed is great. We buy that. We buy that if I just had a little more of this, a little less of that, if this person was kinder to me and this person would just move away, I'd be so happy. Everything would be cool. And that's what we do. We completely trying to rearrange the pieces to be happy. But we have to recognize the causes of our suffering before we can make an effort to understand we have to get out of this. And there's no getting out of it. And one of the things I did at Kathmandu is I had them bring a bucket of sand. And everybody, you can just imagine putting your hand in a bucket of sand, having all those granules of sand, and realizing this doesn't even touch the number of lives we've had. All the grains of sand, or all the beaches and all the deserts in the world, we've had more lives than that. And yet here we are. We still haven't found a way to get away from this. We keep repeating the same mistake over and over and over again. It's not understanding reality. And we can't do that until we recognize the situation we're in. And that's why meditating on these lower realms, and not meditating on them, just looking at them, but actually, just like it's deity yoga practice, visualizing yourself having that experience. And not doing it once or twice, but doing it repeatedly. You can't just look at it, oh, I've read that, I understand, and walk away from it, because then it becomes intellectual and nothing gets to our heart. And without it in our heart, we become hardened to it. Like when we hear somebody's teaching on the lower realms, or teaching the basic foundational practice of perfect human rebirth and death and impermanence, oh, I know that, and we don't go because we become arrogant. We think we know that, and we don't know it. The first sign of someone who has some understanding is the fact that every time there's an opportunity to hear it, they run to it. You can't get enough. It's like your favorite sports team won, and you can't wait to get to the highlights, to hear the good news, sort of thing. It's like, it's so important and it's so beneficial. You just can't leave it as an intellectual thing and think we understand it, because we don't. The first thing is sign is that when you hear that there's a teaching, I know that. Right there, that's a death knell for your Dharma practice. You really have to have it. So, no, it's.
Voices online, hands up, okay.
Asking,
I don't know.
Usually-
You have to tell me. I have no idea how to make this work.
usually Navika or someone says that there are questions. Are you very tired?
No,
You're not tired. Oh,
no, I had my espresso. What's that?
we did indeed. Yeah. He had a double shot espresso in Green Park. So he's okay.
My first one since the end of December at Kopan.
Oh, there's some interesting pranam. Okay, can sexuality be a source of lust?
The source of lust.
Yeah, it seems so. can sexuality be a source of lust?
Well, it's hard to separate the two, probably.
I don't know why he's asking that question.
I don't know. Is there an easier question?
Is there an easier question online?
Well, I can't.
So has that been a problem in retreat, having a lot of lust?
Well, I can say that I subscribe to what His Holiness said when asked about he had sexual desire. Did it come up? And he said yes. You know, and as a monk. I mean, it's not like I have to back up. I got a story to say. When I did my first 6-month retreat, solitary retreat, the Atlanta Kama Biting, and I'd never done a solitary retreat, and I was very worried about the effect solitude would have on me. One, that I wouldn't like it, and one,
Before you were a monk.
huh?
Well, before you were a monk.
Before I was a monk, and I wouldn't like it, and I would be bored. So at the 4-month mark in the retreat, I discovered I was extremely happy. I hadn't been unhappy for like 5 seconds. You know, I would just, thank you. I had just, you know, and I was trying to figure out what is it? What has happened? And what I realized was that I didn't have a desire object. From the time I was like 12 or 13 years old and learned how to masturbate, until then, every female form that walked by was like, oh, is that good? Is that bad? Is that great? That's not so good? You know, it's too old, too young, too tall, too short, whatever. This incredible dialogue always going on like that. And I realized that it was causing me so much misery to have that. And it was like suddenly somebody picking 200 kilos off my back and saying that I didn't know was there the whole time, and picking it off and saying, how does this feel? You know, I was like, wow, man, this is great. And so it was at that point I started making prayers to Lama Zopa Rinpoche to be a monk. You know, and shortly thereafter, that's what came about. So when His Holiness talked about it, and it's my experience, it comes up. But what happens is you use wisdom to recognize how beneficial it is to pursue that, or to pursue this, and to be attached, or the freedom and bliss that comes from not being attached, so not having desire. And so when it comes up, it serves as a reinforcement of the wisdom of non-attachment. You know, it's still not, things come up. Beforehand, before this happened, I was never wanting to bring up the antidotes to sexual desire. I didn't want to have my fantasies screwed with. You know, I wanted them, I enjoyed them, you know. And so, you know, to look at the body as, you know, you look and see the skeleton, you see the intestines, you know, like this, instead of, you know, I didn't want to do that. You know, I didn't want my fantasy to be boogered with, you know. But now, when that comes up, the first thing that comes to mind is, boom, we've got the antidote. You know, I just, you know, so anyway, that's like that. I'm not sure I answered the question, but I tried.
Yeah, much more than, yeah.
So,
Yes, carry on. Venerable has a reservoir of energy.
We often have, unrealistic expectations for us, for other sentient beings. But having a Guru Buddha, who can give so much, who has perfection, is it possible to have unrealistic expectations from them as well, not in terms of what they can give, but what we would like to receive? I mean, has it happened to you, or?
I'm sure it's happened to me, but I think we're expecting our guru to have a magic wand to be able to, this problem goes away, and now you have all my realizations, and doesn't happen. The Buddha, all the Buddha can do is teach us what his experience was, how he advanced in the practice and became enlightened. And it's up to us to put into practice, to put in practice what we understand. We don't begin by knowing everything. I mean, we're not Buddhas, we're babies. But whatever we understand, to try to practice it, because it's then we profit by it. And we have to realize that it's our own responsibility. It's not the Guru's responsibility. We are our own, like I said, the real Guru is here, and we just have to practice. We can't, when we find ourselves not telling the truth, we find ourselves harming someone, we have to recognize how damage it is for them and for us, and to avoid it. Okay.
Sorry?
Anything else on you?
Okay. Yeah.
Some dedications.
I've got one here I'm going to read that I like. It's very short and sweet. That it's the question if I can do it with my glasses off.
You hit the internet?
No, I can do that. So, if, just the dedication that whatever we've engaged with tonight brings benefit for ourselves and for sentient beings. That our purpose in life is to become enlightened, to be perfect benefit for sentient beings, and that whatever we discussed or occurred with us tonight lends to that result. And so this is a short dedication from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. May the poor find enough wealth, those weak with sorrow find new hope, happiness, and comfort. May the frightened not be afraid, and those bound be free. May the weak find power. May all our hearts join in caring for others. And may we be at peace with ourselves and Mother Earth. So thank you very much.
I think we all agree that was pretty amazing to hear. Venerable brings the blessings of Lama Yeshe and all his gurus. Deeply grateful to Venerable. And I hope that you will be able to come back to India again, that this is not your last visit. And if you do, you must come to Delhi. You must come and stay with me and teach at Tushita again. It would be great
Well,
blessing for all of us, I think.
well, like I say, I enjoy. This is my 8th or 9th trip to India. I enjoyed India very much. And when my cabin burned down in 2015, and I didn't know what I was going to do, India was Plan B. Really, I have a very limited income and resources, and India is, quite fortunate as a place I can afford to be, and so I'm very happy. I was telling Kabir, I might prefer to travel by train in America also, and I really enjoy sleeper class. I really enjoy. I was a carpenter. I was like a working guy. And so I find that the people in sleeper class are just like me, or I'm just like them. And like this last 40 some odd hours from Hubli, I didn't speak any Hindi, and they didn't speak any English. But still, we enjoy. There's so much enjoyment. These people are really alive and kind and generous and compassionate, and I love Indians. I'm sorry, I'm just not sorry about it all. I'm quite happy. So anyway, I'm very thankful to be here. And in 1 month I'll be 79, and it's very old. So we have to see what happens. We could be in our next life before I get to Kabir's.
Oh, we'll try not.
It's true.
So just a very small token of our appreciation.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it. thank you. This one I like. Okay,
Thank you all very, very
anyway,
much.
thank you all for being here. I appreciate it.
Tomorrow's session will be from Bodh Gaya, on Zoom. And a quick photo. Yeah, Venerable, you might have to,
Certainly.
do you want to stand for the photo or sit? What's easier for you now?
Whatever you want to do.
Maybe you sit, I'm afraid. Yeah, sit still.
Sit.
I mean, sit again.
Roll over.
And sit still.
Roll over. Beg.
And you can hold these, I guess. Come on, folks, if you want to be in the photo, fatafat. Quick. Learn how to move fast. Please, come in the photo. That's okay. Some more standing room at the back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
And take one with
Oh,
Bhagat Bhai, who's an aspiring filmmaker.
who is?
This gentleman.
Really?
Yes. Aspiring people here.
What kind of films were you making?
He's up to now, he's been making short films. Tell Venerable what you want to do.
Love to like emotional films.
Emotion.
Ah,
Like in Hindi, I would say "Andar ki baat," stuff, inside stuff. I'm interested in that.
it's hard to see.
Yeah,
Must be interesting to find a way to.
just feel it. I think, yeah.
Good luck with it.
I really need this.
When I come back, you can see.
Yes. I'll love it.
Thank you.
Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and everyone the mantra, but three were very own aim. So what I said is, it is for being enlightened for self-awareness.
Thank you, everyone online. Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that.
No,